Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. As hard as it is to believe, it's already October, and if you've been tuning into the channel for a while now, you know that can mean only one thing. It's time for another edition of Dumbest World Criminals, our quarterly recurring series where we take a look at some of the dumbest criminals in world crime stories that we've covered so far in a given year on Crimes of the Week International. One thing to keep in mind is that these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so minor details and things like specific charges may have been updated since we first covered them. Also, if you like these videos, be sure to let us know in the comments section below. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Shocking footage has emerged out of Pakistan this week after a pet lion escaped from a home and launched a terrifying attack on a woman and her two young children, an incident that has since led to arrests, outrage, and a wider crackdown on illegal big cat ownership. The ordeal unfolded on Thursday, July 3rd, in Lahore's Johar town neighborhood. Dramatic CCTV footage shows the lion leaping effortlessly over a concrete wall, pouncing on a woman from behind and knocking her to the ground. As terrified onlookers scatter, a man can be seen running out of the property the lion escaped from, waving an object and managing to chase the animal away. But the nightmare didn't end there. The lion then bolted further down the street where it attacked the initial victim's two young children, ages 5 and 7. All three sustained injuries to their faces and arms and were rushed to a local hospital. Thankfully, authorities later confirmed they are now in stable condition. In the chaos, the lion's owners managed to recapture the animal and loaded it into a vehicle before going into hiding in another district. But police tracked them down quickly. On Friday morning, July 4th, Lahore police announced that 3 people had been arrested in connection with the incident. The lion was also seized and transferred to local wildlife authorities. According to police, the animal escaped from an open cage at the property where the incident took place. In case you're wondering, yes, it is legal to own a variety of big cats in Pakistan, including lions, cheetahs, tigers, pumas, and jaguars. And from the sounds of it, there are really only a couple of rules. First, you have to pay a one-time registration fee equivalent to about $176 US. Second, the animal must be kept outside city limits. And that's what's particularly galling about this week's incident. Authorities say that the lion was not properly registered by its owners, and Lahore is the second largest city in the country, so there goes rule number 2 as well. Adding insult to injury, in an interview with local media, the husband and father of the 3 victims told reporters the owners stood by and watched as their pet clawed at his family, making no real effort to restrain it. Days after the incident, authorities launched a broader crackdown on illegal wildlife possession in Punjab province. 5 additional people have since been arrested, and 13 lions have been recovered. The chief ranger of Punjab's Wildlife and Parks Department told media outlets that they are pursuing the toughest punishment possible for the trio arrested in this case. Under the Wildlife Act, they could face up to 7 years in prison or a fine equating to about $17,500 US. At the time of this recording, the investigation is ongoing, and the video of the attack has sparked fresh debate in Pakistan about keeping big cats as status symbols in urban areas. The case of a missing motorcycle in Thailand took an unusual turn this week when the man accused of stealing the vehicle reportedly attempted to outsmart police and witnesses by pretending to be drunk. The whole thing began in the early morning hours of July 3rd in the city of Pattaya. According to reports, around 3 a.m. that day, a black Honda PCX motorcycle disappeared from an apartment complex in the city's Soy Bangkat area. The vehicle belonged to a 33-year-old man named Sataporn Nantuan, who, upon discovering it was missing, quickly reported the situation to police. A few hours later, while on his way to the hospital with his grandmother, Sataporn couldn't believe what he saw: his missing motorcycle sitting in an alleyway. However, the vehicle wasn't abandoned. Moments later, the man who allegedly stole it in the first place appeared and started walking towards it once again. Thinking fast, Sataporn called for help. Local residents in the area responded immediately, confronting and detaining the suspect. That's where things got weird, though. In a strange and obviously desperate attempt to avoid responsibility, the accused thief suddenly began slurring his words, staggering around, and trying to look as if he were drunk. When police arrived, they found the suspect surrounded by residents. CCTV footage collected from nearby cameras later confirmed the theft, revealing that the suspect had taken the stolen motorcycle from the apartment complex earlier that morning and had been riding it through nearby alleys. The black Honda PCX was recovered at the scene. Despite continuing to act incoherent and claiming to be intoxicated, no one was buying it, and the suspect was taken into custody. As you might imagine, the incident has quickly become a local talking point, though police were quick to remind the public that, while creative, such attempts to avoid arrest rarely work, especially when caught on camera. At the time of this recording, the investigation remains ongoing as officers work to determine if the suspect may be linked to any other thefts in the area. Authorities in South Korea's North Gyeongsang province say that a mother and a teacher are in hot water this week after they were recently caught breaking into a high school in the middle of the night as part of an academic cheating scheme to steal final exam papers. The whole thing was uncovered early on the morning of July 4th when police were called to the high school in question, which is located in the city of Andong. According to reports, the two suspects, a 48-year-old mother and a 31-year-old teacher, broke in to steal test papers, which they planned to use to prepare the 48-year-old woman's daughter for her upcoming final exams. It seems that the women were quite comfortable and confident in what they were doing. Not only had the 31-year-old teacher formerly worked at the school, but it's alleged that the women had enlisted the help of a maintenance worker at the building as well. Unfortunately for them, though, their whole plan fell apart when they accidentally set off an alarm around 1:20 a.m. When police responded to the scene, they were caught and placed under arrest. It's since been revealed that this week's crime was far from a one-off incident. Police now allege that the mother and teacher have been engaging in this kind of behavior for some time. They say that they have found evidence of financial transactions between them and suspect that this was part of an ongoing theft and bribery scheme. The school also confirmed that while the 31-year-old suspect now teaches at a completely different institution, she entered her prior workplace at least 7 times following her resignation in February of 2024. They now believe she was using these visits to steal other test materials, as almost all of the visits coincided with exam periods. The stolen materials were reportedly used to help the 48-year-old suspect's daughter, who attends the high school where the crime took place. She was allegedly given the test and exams ahead of time, allowing her to maintain top grades in her class throughout high school. She was also tutored by the 31-year-old suspect, which is illegal in and of itself. According to local media, it's against the law in South Korea for currently employed teachers to give paid extracurricular instruction. As you might imagine, the whole thing has caused quite a bit of outrage amongst other parents and students in the country, who say that more needs to be done to prevent this kind of thing from happening. But with South Korea having one of the most hyper-competitive education systems in the world, scandals like this are far from rare. Just this past June, police announced that they were investigating another cheating scheme after the answers to a nationwide English exam were leaked in an online chat room. And in February, nearly 250 people were arrested, including a number of teachers, after mock questions for one of the country's most high-profile exams were found being sold to private prep academies. As for those involved in this week's incident, the 48-year-old mother now faces charges including trespassing and interfering with school operations, while the 31-year-old teacher has been accused of facilitating theft and allowing unlawful entry. The 48-year-old suspect's daughter, meanwhile, has been recommended by her school for expulsion, and all of her past exam results have been nullified. Police in the Indian capital of New Delhi say that a recent phone snatching case took quite the bizarre turn this week after new evidence revealed that the case was not as simple as it first appeared. The whole thing started back on June 19th when the victim, an unidentified 30-year-old man from New Delhi's Sultanpur village, was finishing up his day. He was on his way home from his nursing job at a local hospital when suddenly he was robbed. Before he could react, 2 men pulled up on a scooter, grabbed his cell phone out of his hands, and drove off. The man reported the incident, but neither he or police initially thought it was that big of a deal. That was until authorities began looking at CCTV footage from the area around the crime and retracing the suspect's steps. That's when they learned that the victim's own wife, a 25-year-old woman, was involved in what had happened. The full details weren't learned until recently, when the surveillance footage was used to follow the scooter after the robbery. That's how police were able to track down and arrest one of the two suspects, a 27-year-old man named Ankit Galat. Galat told investigators that he had been hired by his friend to help commit the crime, which had been planned for a very specific reason. You see, Galat's friend was having an affair with the victim's wife. The 30-year-old husband had figured out what was going on about 3 months earlier, and while his wife was sleeping, he went through her phone. He sent himself incriminating photos of his wife and her lover to his own device as proof of what was going on. When the 25-year-old woman discovered this, she worried that her husband was going to tell her family about the affair. So she plotted with her lover and his friend to orchestrate the snatching so that they could delete the images off her husband's phone. It appears this part of the plan was a success, as by the time police recovered the device, everything had been deleted. Still, with the video evidence and Galat's confession, authorities were able to place the 25-year-old wife under arrest. At the time of this recording, she and Galat remain in custody while police continue their search for the woman's lover. A botched early morning motorbike theft in Thailand took a turn for the absurd this week after a suspect ended up stabbing himself with his own weapon during a failed getaway. It all happened at around 4:40 a.m. on July 22nd outside a grocery store near the Khao Noi intersection in Pluak Tang district. Surveillance footage shows the 38-year-old suspect, identified only by the name Kritsana, loitering outside the store while pretending to browse. Moments later, he hops on a white motorbike parked outside and speeds off, armed with a 12-inch knife. But the bike's owner, 31-year-old Suchin, had seen it all unfold. Without hesitation, she jumped on another motorcycle and began chasing him. The pursuit didn't last for long, though. Roughly half a mile down the road, Kritsana lost control and crashed into a patch of grass at the roadside. And in a painful twist of instant karma, during the fall, the knife he'd been clutching reportedly stabbed him in the stomach. Emergency services were called to the scene, where first responders found Kritsana face down and bleeding heavily from the abdomen. Even so, it could have turned out worse. 2 additional knives were found on Kritsana. Initially, he claimed he had simply fallen off his bike and didn't know how he got the injury. But by the time he was taken to the hospital, Suchin had already reviewed the store's CCTV footage and handed it over to local police. Authorities say the footage clearly showed Kritsana committing the theft and contradicted his story. Although Suchin declined to press charges, saying that she was just happy to have her motorbike back, officers have seized the vehicle and all 3 knives for examination. They say they'll wait until the suspect recovers before formally questioning him and pursuing charges. However, police emphasize that the case will move forward regardless, due to the public safety implications. A man in the coastal Western Australian city of Albany is facing serious consequences after police say he was recently caught driving under the influence, a bust that happened thanks in large part to a pretty damning clue that was found right on top of his car. It all began at around 5 p.m. on June 9th, when a Western Australia police officer noticed something unusual while on patrol along Stirling Terrace. A vehicle passed by with what looked like a full-sized beer bottle balanced on its roof. Body cam footage, later released by Western Australia police, shows the moment the officer pulled the car over and greeted the driver, identified in the video only as Reese. The officer then calmly pointed to the bottle sitting just inches above the man's head. In the video, Reese seems momentarily confused. When asked if he'd consumed any alcohol that day, he replies, quote, "Not this morning, no," before the officer gestures towards the glass bottle balanced above him.
You haven't consumed any alcohol?
Not this morning.
No, okay. It's just 'cause you left your beer on the roof of your car.
In the footage, Reese attempts to play the situation off by telling the officers that the beer bottle had been on the roof since the night before. However, it's incredibly obvious that he's intoxicated. Not only could he seemingly not remember where he lived when asked, a roadside breath test revealed he had a blood alcohol content of 0.367, more than 7 times the legal limit. Western Australia police posted the video online on July 19th with a caption that read, quote, "Some people leave their phone on the roof. This guy, his beer bottle. Nothing says pull me over quite like mobile happy hour." As you might imagine, the post quickly went viral. Rees appeared before the Perth Magistrates Court on July 6th. He was fined $4,000 and had his license disqualified for 3 years. Representatives from the Hong Kong police force say that a man is facing charges in connection with a truly stomach-churning case after he was accused of mixing his own urine into bottles of soda and putting them on store shelves. According to police, the suspect, identified only as a 63-year-old unemployed man, contaminated numerous bottles of Coca-Cola Plus and 7-Up with the bodily fluid before sneaking them into several supermarkets in Hong Kong's Sham Shui Po, Mong Kok, and Wan Chai neighborhoods. It's not known exactly how many times he did this, but disturbingly, authorities say this may have been going on for up to a year. It's believed the man targeted the specific stores where the crimes took place, possibly out of revenge after having arguments with staff members there. Disgustingly, the whole thing wasn't uncovered until the end of July, when a 9-year-old boy became ill after unknowingly consuming one of the contaminated beverages. Thankfully, the boy was discharged the same day with no lasting symptoms, though just the thought alone is absolutely revolting. Following a widespread investigation involving extensive reviews of surveillance footage at the affected stores, police were able to identify the 63-year-old suspect. Employees at the supermarkets also reportedly recovered at least 7 bottles of the man's disturbing piss pops. The 63-year-old was arrested on August 9th and now faces charges including administering a noxious substance with intent to injure. In a statement this week, Chief Inspector Alex Yao of the West Kowloon Crime Bureau described the case as serious, emphasizing that it not only threatens food safety, but also public health. He emphasized that testing of the recovered bottles did not reveal any additional contaminants or poisons beyond the presence of the urine. But, how much of a relief is that really? Authorities have since urged the public to be vigilant, checking that drink bottles are properly sealed and showing no unusual color or volume changes before purchase. If convicted of the charges against him, the 63-year-old suspect could be looking at up to 3 years in prison. Representatives from England's Cambridgeshire police shared an equally amusing and unsettling bit of body cam footage this week after a suspected DUI driver was recently caught while taking a little trip to dreamland. It all started in the early morning hours of June 29th when Cambridgeshire police received a call from a concerned member of the public. The caller said that they had just seen a clearly intoxicated man stumble into a Mercedes van and drive off. Finding the driver took a little while, but as it turned out, catching him wasn't very difficult. That's because when Cambridgeshire police located him shortly before 4 o'clock that morning, he was passed out behind the wheel. The man, later identified as 36-year-old Scott Tuit, had come to a stop in the middle of the road and the engine of his van was still running. Tuit was apparently so fast asleep that he was snoring loudly, leading to this priceless interaction.
Sir, hello, how are you?
Yeah, so as you just saw, things didn't go super well for the 36-year-old. After being shaken awake, he clearly did not know where he was and was slurring his words, leading officers to demand a breathalyzer test. When Tuit refused to cooperate, he was taken into custody. Last week, Tuit pleaded guilty to failing to provide a specimen for analysis. For those unaware, failing to provide a sample of blood, breath, or urine for analysis in a situation like this in the UK is treated the same as if you'd failed the roadside test. As a result, Tuit was sentenced to a 12-month community order, which includes 80 hours of unpaid work, and was banned from driving. As ridiculous as the footage is, though, understandably, police aren't laughing. Along with the body cam video they posted this week, they reminded the public of the serious dangers of impaired driving and credited the Good Samaritan who reported Tuit with helping to avoid a potential tragedy. Authorities in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh say that a man's already bad day last week had an even worse ending, when what started out as a grand romantic gesture not only ended in his arrest, but quite the devastating surprise as well. The whole thing began at around 9 a.m. on August 24th, when the man in question, Pawan Pandey, climbed a cell phone tower in Bhadohi district. Now, obviously, this was dangerous and illegal on its own, but what happened next really started to concern people. Once Pandey got to the top of the tower, he started shouting that he was going to jump unless someone brought his girlfriend so he could propose to her. Pandey said that he had been seeing a woman named Khushbu for 2 years and was in love with her, but he hadn't been able to marry her because he believed there were people keeping the two of them apart. When police and firefighters arrived at the scene that day, they were able to call Pandey because he had taken his phone with him up to the top of the cell tower. But no matter how much they tried to reason with him, he wouldn't come down. He was insistent that he wasn't going anywhere until they found Khushbu. For about 5 hours, it appears that emergency responders actually did try to find the woman. However, when they did, they uncovered something pretty crushing. You see, Khushbu didn't exist. It turned out Pandey had fallen victim to an online romance scam and had been sending money to criminals using a fake Instagram profile. Police were finally able to get Pandey to come down from the tower by making him believe they'd gotten Khushbu on the phone. That's when they broke 2 pieces of bad news to him. His girlfriend didn't exist, and he was under arrest for causing a public disturbance. Thankfully, it seems Pandey won't be in too much trouble, and police say that they are now investigating to see if they can find the fraudsters behind the romance scam. Shoppers in a busy South Korean supermarket were left equally terrified and confused earlier this month after a woman wearing a cat mask suddenly pulled out 2 knives and began brandishing them in the aisles. The bizarre scene unfolded at around 7:23 p.m. on August 2nd inside a store in the Okpodong neighborhood of Geoje, South Gyeongsang Province. According to security footage later released by the National Police Agency, the suspect, a woman in her 20s whose surname has only been given as A, was first seen wandering quietly through the toy section. However, without warning, she produced 2 knives and began walking through the store holding them in the air. Children who spotted her immediately fled, while staff members tried to intervene but quickly backed off when she advanced toward them with the weapons still raised. At one point, footage shows supermarket workers arming themselves with umbrellas as improvised shields, while repeatedly urging her to put the knives down. Instead, the woman charged at them, forcing employees to retreat further into the store. Police quickly rushed to the scene. With shoppers evacuated to safety, officers aimed a taser at the suspect and ordered her to drop the weapons. Eventually, she sat down on the floor, at which point they moved in, subdued her, and arrested her on the spot. Thankfully, no one was injured, but what stunned many was the woman's behavior after her arrest. When officers asked why she was carrying the knives or if she had other weapons, she responded only by meowing. According to police, the female suspect also gave bizarre answers that incorporated cat noises into them, saying things like, quote, "I can't tell you, meow." When asked if she had a phone, she replied, quote, "Why would I tell you that, meow?" Authorities later confirmed that the woman has a history of mental illness. She has since been placed under compulsory psychiatric hospitalization. The strange incident, which was partially captured on video and uploaded to the police agency's YouTube channel, has since been widely shared in South Korea. The footage shows the woman dressed in a pink cat mask and fur-trimmed gloves, calmly looking around the aisles before the sudden outburst. While no one was hurt, the case has reignited debates over public safety and mental health resources in South Korea, with many online commenters expressing concern that such an incident could unfold in a family-friendly shopping center. A year-long cat-and-mouse game between an Indian police department and a local vehicle theft gang came to a bizarre end this week when authorities finally got the upper hand thanks to an unexpected assist from man's best friend. According to reports, for some time now, police in Lucknow have been trying to catch the perpetrators behind a spree of motorcycle thefts. For about a year, dozens of the bikes had been disappearing all over the city, usually from busy market areas where vehicles are often left unattended. During investigations, it became clear that the same gang was behind most of these thefts, But because the crimes were opportunistic and difficult to respond to because of crowding and congestion, police were at a frustrating disadvantage. Well, it seems the tables finally turned this week, thanks in large part to a group of unlikely vigilantes. It all started sometime on September 7th when a man ran into a police station in Lucknow's Chowk area and yelled that his motorcycle had just been stolen. The victim had actually caught the thief in the act, and as a result, he told officers that they could still catch the suspect if they hurried. Immediately, a sub-inspector who was on duty at the police station sprung into action, jumping on his own motorcycle and beginning a chase. Initially, it seemed like he was out of luck when the thief abandoned the bike a couple miles away and quickly jumped into a car with several accomplices. However, that's when the sub-inspector caught an incredibly lucky break. Attracted by the commotion of what was going on, a pack of stray dogs suddenly surrounded the gang's car and blocked their path. The dogs were apparently growling and snarling, causing the suspects to panic and drive down an alleyway. Well, that alleyway happened to be a dead end, and it was right at the same time that additional backup from the police station arrived to help the sub-inspector. When the whole thing was over, officers arrested 6 suspects at the scene, all of whom are believed to be members of the vehicle theft ring. Authorities later arrested 2 more men and were also able to recover at least 40 stolen motorcycles. At the time of this recording, police say they are now analyzing each of the vehicles and are hoping to reunite them with their rightful owners. Police in Thailand say they've arrested a retired Dutchman in what can only be described as a bizarre attempted heist after he was caught dragging a stolen ATM down the road with his pickup truck. The strange incident began in the early hours of September 22nd when officers were called to the Bantum community in Khon province. A witness reported that someone had tried to remove an ATM from the local Siam commercial bank branch. By the time police arrived, the suspect, 60-year-old Sitsa Kuflar, had already managed to rip the ATM free from its frame. Using a trolley and his black pickup truck, Kuflar was hauling the massive machine down the street. At about 2:05 a.m., officers intercepted him on a local road, noting that he was driving against the flow of traffic with the ATM bouncing behind his vehicle. Drag marks could also apparently be seen on the pavement leading to the crime scene. Authorities say Kuflar, a Dutch national living in the area, admitted that he had planned the theft as a way to get cash. He explained that he had recently transferred 10 million baht, more than $310,000 US, to his Thai wife for a business investment. But after she told him the money wasn't enough, they started arguing, and out of frustration, he decided to try and steal the ATM. Police confirmed that Kuflar tested negative for drugs and that his wife had no knowledge of the plan. A police source told reporters, quote, "She only learned about the ATM theft when we contacted her." Forensic teams collected fingerprints from both the ATM and the pickup, while bank representatives filed formal complaints. Kuflar is now facing multiple charges, including nighttime theft, property damage, and using a vehicle in the commission of a crime. Under Thai law, that last detail could add extra time to his sentence, potentially bringing it up to 10.5 years in prison, along with fines ranging from the equivalent of about $60 to $450 US. At the time of this recording, Kuflar remains in custody and the investigation continues. Representatives from England's Derbyshire police say that they've recently dealt with what might be one of the strangest and slowest vehicle chases they've ever seen after a serial shoplifter attempted to escape officers in a car even when it no longer had functioning tires. The whole thing began last month on August 18th when Derbyshire police announced they were on the lookout for a Ford Mondeo suspected of being used in multiple retail thefts. The car was eventually spotted in the small village of Swarkston, where its driver, 42-year-old Uten Rook, tried to evade capture. Officers deployed a stinger device which punctured all 4 of the vehicle's tires. But instead of stopping, Rook carried on, leading officers on what police later described as, quote, one of the lowest of the slowest pursuits ever seen in Derbyshire. Dashcam footage of the bizarre incident shows Rook creeping along village roads at speeds of just 10 to 15 miles per hour, his mangled tires flapping against the wheel rims. At one point, he even tried to swerve away from pursuing units, but he was eventually boxed in by police vehicles. The chase came to an end when he rammed into a crash barrier, striking one of the patrol cars in the process and injuring the officer inside. When Rook was pulled from the car and arrested, investigators quickly realized there was much more going on. Not only was the 42-year-old already banned from driving, but he was also wanted for a parole violation. Checks revealed that his Ford's license plate had been tampered with using tape so that the vehicle could be used in a string of shoplifting incidents, including thefts at a Greg's Bakery in Derby City Centre on July 8th and a co-op store on Chellaston Road on August 13th. In addition to those thefts, Rook was charged with failing to stop for police, driving while disqualified, using a vehicle without insurance, failing to provide a specimen, criminal damage, and assault. He appeared before Southern Derbyshire Magistrates Court on August 20th, where he admitted the offenses. The judge handed him a 41-week prison sentence, disqualified him from driving for 692 days, and ordered him to pay £85 in court costs, as well as compensation to the injured officer and the 2 businesses he targeted. A Japanese father reportedly got the shock of his life last week, when he not only came face-to-face with a terrifying home intruder, but he also discovered the equally sick and strange reason he was there. The bizarre encounter happened just after 4 a.m. on Thursday, September 18th, when the unidentified father in question slid open the door to a traditional Japanese-style room inside his family's home. That's where he found a grown man dressed in his teenage daughter's school uniform. The outfit had reportedly been left hanging out to dry, but the suspect apparently would have actually had to break in order to get to it. Upon being discovered, the intruder, later identified as 37-year-old office worker Kenta Okazaki, immediately tried to flee while still wearing the clothing. The father, meanwhile, shouted, "Don't run away," and chased after him. A scuffle broke out outside of the home, during which the father sustained injuries to his face. But despite the struggle, he managed to hold Okazaki until police arrived. After being taken into custody, the 37-year-old was apparently quite candid with police, later admitting, quote, "I broke in to steal women's clothing." He was arrested on suspicion of robbery and assault. Authorities subsequently revealed why the father had been so determined not to let Okazaki get away. They noted that the same house had been targeted 3 or 4 years earlier, and during that crime, school uniforms were also stolen. The father added in an interview, quote, "My daughter's uniform had been stolen in the past, and someone broke in again, so I thought I couldn't let this burglar get away, so I acted accordingly." Police are now looking into whether Okazaki may have been behind those earlier thefts as well, and are still investigating exactly how he gained entry into the home. Authorities on the island nation of Singapore say that a man has officially pleaded guilty to serious charges this week, following a truly unhinged incident nearly 2 years ago when he threatened to bomb a cruise ship after losing money gambling while on holiday. The whole thing began back on October 11th, 2023, when the man in question, 41-year-old Neo Hui Gim, boarded a Resorts World Cruises ship with his parents. The family had booked a short 2-day trip, which took them from Singapore to Malaysia and back. According to reports, after heading out to sea, Gim initially planned to see a concert that was being held on the ship, but was turned away after being told that tickets for the performance were sold out. Instead, he decided to make a visit to the ship's casino. He would go on to make several more visits to the casino, during which he lost around 2,000 Singapore dollars, the equivalent of about $1,500 US. Despite the fact that no one had forced him to gamble, or to keep gambling for that matter, Gim apparently blamed the cruise line for his losses. So much so that less than an hour after getting off the boat on October 13th, he began to send a series of threats to the cruise line demanding his money back. From the sounds of it, Gim got straight to the point. The subject line of his very first email to the company was, quote, "Bomb at Resorts World Cruises." The message read, quote, "If I don't receive the money, I hope that one day Resorts World Cruises will explode and all guests and service personnel will drop into the sea." Now, you might be saying to yourself, that's pretty wild, but it's not necessarily an explicit threat. Well, as I alluded to a second ago, that was only Gim's first email. Over the course of that same afternoon, the 41-year-old reportedly sent at least 2 other messages to different Resorts World Cruises employees. Those messages contain lines like, quote, "Next time, if I lose again, I'll make sure the whole cruise is burnt." And quote, "Please return me back my monies, else the ship will explode and everyone dropped into the sea. Next time when I cruise again and happen to lose money, I'll ensure the entire cruise ship explode." One email simply stated, quote, "Your cruise will be burnt down." Now, considering that Gim's cruise had just ended, the company had to take these threats seriously and make sure he wasn't still aboard the ship. Police were called, a ship-wide inspection had to be done, and the whole scare apparently caused a significant delay for the next group of approximately 4,000 travelers who were scheduled to leave that day. Unfortunately for Gim, it didn't take long for police to figure out who he was, and that's because he'd used the same email to threaten the company that he had to book his cruise. He was arrested that same day and this week pleaded guilty to communicating false information about a harmful situation. According to local media, the 41-year-old is scheduled to be sentenced next month. He is currently facing up to 7 years in prison, a fine of $50,000, or both. Representatives from Australia's New South Wales Police say that an accused drunk driver is facing charges this week after she was allegedly caught on video crashing her SUV while under the influence of alcohol, then leaving the scene, only to return a short time later. The whole thing unfolded in the early morning hours of September 22nd in the Sydney suburb of Canley Heights. It was shortly before 2 a.m., and most residents of Canley Vale Road were asleep in bed when suddenly they were awoken by a loud bang from outside. When they rushed to see what was happening, they were greeted by an alarming scene. A luxury SUV was lying smashed and completely overturned in the middle of the street. 2 other vehicles, a car and a postal van, were also badly damaged. Surveillance video managed to capture the dramatic moment that the crash took place. It shows the luxury Audi SUV speeding down the road that morning before colliding with the 2 other vehicles, which were parked at the time of the incident. As you can see, the SUV fully flips upside down due to the significant impact. When police arrived at the scene, the female driver of the car was nowhere to be found and was believed to have fled on foot. However, that changed a short time later when she apparently came wandering back to the crime scene. The suspect, identified so far only as a 27-year-old woman, was immediately arrested and upon being breath tested was found to be more than 3 times over the legal limit for alcohol while driving. As if that weren't bad enough, police say she was also on her phone at the time she crashed. While thankfully no one was hurt as a result of the crash, the owner of the car that sustained most of the damage says that the incident has left him facing a major financial setback. His insurance had just expired, meaning he will now have to pay for the thousands of dollars in damage to his car out of pocket. At the time of this recording, the 27-year-old woman has been charged with drink driving and using a mobile phone while driving. Her license was also suspended, and she is set to face court in November. Hey there. Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Luke and I are so grateful for our incredible Crime Zone community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help Crime Zone continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to support the channel, there are a couple of options. We've got a thriving community over on Patreon, where you can get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. Head over to patreon.com/crimezone to learn more and to meet some of the awesome people whose names are currently on screen. If that isn't your thing, we've also now launched channel memberships so you can join directly here on YouTube. Channel members get a lot of the same perks as on Patreon, including extra content, without the added hassle of having to go off-platform. Now, that being said, we know times are tough and that not everyone is able to support financially. Regardless of your situation though, we want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.